Well, it's interesting when I get some of the reactions to the videos that I am not fair enough or even being hypocritical. Not sure what they mean, and when I ask, well, what do you mean by that? Could you provide examples? They don't really say, but there we are. So I actually recorded something earlier, but I think frankly it might be a little too over the heads of certain people, so I'm like, all right, yeah. And I got accused of that I need to simplify it as well. Okay, fine. So let's keep it simple. So we have cult number one, the Scientology cult, and then evil cult number two, the Aaron cult. Now, number two is less evil than number one, and Aaron really likes to hammer that home, that nothing he's done is as evil as number one. That's true. Aaron is less evil than David Miscavige. That's about it. That's the only thing I would agree in terms of historical facts. But bringing more facts, I don't think he's Anne Frank. I don't think he's even a victim of, like, say, the Rwandan genocide. So if you're a Rwandan or Anne Frank, then yes, especially where primary experience is like genocidal trauma, I'd have to say we have to be very careful how we judge that person. I'll just keep it simple. Aaron is not that kind of case. He's not a Rwandan. He's not Anne Frank. But a lot of the conversation kept going, again, about his victimhood and how DOA, as well as I guess Zero Dark Tony, was not respectful enough. So let's deal with the DOA question. This is what I understood of it, and it's a little confusing. So a couple of days ago, Aaron had this encounter with Zero Dark Tony. We've covered that, basically harassing him and his mother. We've already covered that. We'll cover that near the end. But then he did that, and then another day he decided to show up at this LA meeting. Apparently it was coordinated to do propaganda, basically. So he, Serge, Jenna, and Streets LA were there to do propaganda. As was DOA, and he said his piece, and apparently he maintained respectful silence. But when Aaron was finishing up his little propaganda speech, DOA yelled out something true. Now, I thought it was just a good Samaritan, but apparently no, it is DOA. So I haven't seen that tape. I need to catch up on that, but that's what happened. And Aaron is still really angry about that. And he kept going back to Nora defending DOA. And Nora said, listen, I have only so many hours in a day. I have to cook and clean, yada, yada, yada. I have these appointments. I could not see that part. She did admit she was in DOA's chat. Again, I don't know this for a fact. I'll have to double check. So apparently this is DOA driving to the meeting. And she was supportive there. Now, I've taken Nora to task on several things, so let's keep it brief and simple. So about a week or so ago, on tape, although it's very fuzzy, we could barely see anything, but on tape, and we could make out the words, apparently Kenny, who's a DOA ally, was caught by his lover or girlfriend or whoever cheating on him. And they had a big back and forth. It did appear that Kenny was threatening her, but don't know. Maybe it was just simple dispute. Maybe he's innocent. Maybe the recording is biased or been altered. Anyway, so DOA is not coming from a pure position. At this point, he has to be aware of this tape, has to be aware of these accusations. As far as I know, DOA has not answered. Well, what are you going to do with Kenny? As far as I know. So that's where we are. So we have these various cults just vying for control in LA. It is a very weird nightmare situation, but you'd have to be, unfortunately, brutal and say at this point, DOA is relatively more honest than either the Scientology cult or the Aaron cult. Doesn't make him a good guy, but that's where we are in terms of the scale of evil and truthhood. But that's not good enough for Aaron, so he keeps insisting to Nora, you have to disavow him. And Nora's like, I have not seen the tape, I cannot disavow. And I want us all to work together, Aaron, and da-da-da-da-da-da. Like, Aaron does not control Streets LA. I think that's a solid logical point, that he doesn't control what Streets LA does. However, it's not true to say he has no influence. Right? They're friends. They're some of the two biggest YouTubers covering a certain topic, sometimes mutually together. So Aaron acting like an innocent lamb there is kind of silly. And him saying, there is no just... Yes, Aaron, there is justification. You're a monster. You've done horrible things. If people yell or scream, which you've done on camera, you've done it over and over and over again. And frankly, to people who seem totally innocent. So let's keep it, again, real simple. So there's a tape, and by the way, I defended him on principle, because good or bad, he does have free speech. So he's yelling at this group of Germans. I know, the irony is insane. I know, let's skip over the obvious irony of Aaron yelling at these small German people. It's ridiculous. So it's two men and a woman, very old, and they were just going to some Scientology building or whatever. And Aaron was yelling at them, what about Danny Masterson? Let's put aside the obvious problem of relevance. Did these German Scientologists have anything to do with Danny Masterson? Well, the probability is like insanely low. You can still raise the point. Isn't it horrible you're part of this organization that's tied to Danny Masterson? But I mean, really, did this old German woman have anything to do with the Danny Masterson case? We have zero evidence. So what is Aaron up to? Nothing. But anyway, so he's yelling and screaming at this old woman. It's like, okay, fine, free speech. He can do that. He's getting upset that DOA, a grown man, is yelling at him. Nothing untrue. That's the center of the controversy for Aaron. Could you believe that, Nora? He yelled at me, an ex-Scientologist. Right. Okay, but you yelling at that old Scientology woman. Also, you yelling at Zero Dark Tony's mother. We're not getting a good record here. Apparently, his modus operandi on average is yelling at smaller, weaker, old women. Okay? How dare you? This mother is tied to Zero Dark Tony. That woman is tied to Scientology. So are you, Aaron. I mean, the insanity here is that when Aaron was active in Scientology, he was in LA. When Danny Masterson was going on his rampage. Wouldn't the issue of historical guilt be more on you than that woman? I mean, presumably she was in Germany when these things were happening, unless he has evidence otherwise. So what are we talking about? Well, we're talking about extreme historical revisionism, where Aaron is now Anne Frank, and how dare you? I was there with beautiful Surgis in Streets LA. Oh, those two other liars and grifters. So what he's saying is, they were there to do propaganda, but hey, we should respect the propaganda. Why are we doing propaganda? Well, you know, that's what cults do. Alrighty then, so it's really just going a big circle to nowhere, and Nora's position is, I just want to be inclusive. I cannot devour my DOA. I need to check things out, Aaron. I have only hours in the day, which is also not true. Like Nora's emphasized, this is her full-time job. It's a full-time job, right? So you don't have a normal job. You have a wife. And again, I've tried to be extremely respectful. Her kids are old enough to make their own meals. I mean, really? Really, this is just silly. So, okay, good faith. She didn't see the tape. What is Aaron even getting upset about? It's like, it's in a democracy. People talk back to me, but I'm an ex-Scientologist. I've been traumatized, guys. I'm a victim too. How, Aaron? What is your victimization? The closest I can find is the disconnection policy, which is devastating to some families. His family? Or even on his wife's side? I mean, what is the devastation? We can't talk to our second cousin? I mean, I get it. Aaron is stupid, but get some perspective. Read some real history for once in your... Like, study the Armenian genocide. Study any genocide. Okay, you're not at that level of victimhood. You're not. Nothing shows that you are. They say, well, yes, you do. I don't have to. Yes, you do, Aaron. Yes, you do. When people yell back at you facts about what you do, that is nothing scandalous. DOA did nothing wrong at all. There's nothing wrong here. I've been excited. That does not matter unless you're a special case of an ex-Scientologist who suffered like an Armenian. Unless you're at that level, what are you complaining about? Like this central conversation they had, meant nothing, went nowhere. And he even questioned, Nora, by the way, I'm not giving her any points. Nora's like, Aaron, I'm just disturbed how you treated Zero Dark Tony and the mother. Not because I care about them, because you might screw up their legal case. And Aaron's like, no, it's fine. No, that's not going to be affected. So that's pure power politics. They're just talking about saying, Aaron, I don't care about Zero Dark Tony, but I want the legal case to be solid. I don't want any sympathy for Zero Dark Tony. And Aaron's like, don't worry, I'm going to handle the propaganda there too. So it's like, okay, so that's all we're debating is the kind of we're debating the kind of propaganda we should put out there. That's about the only debate they had. And they just differed on Nora's squeaky clean inclusivity propaganda style and Aaron's more authoritarian, I'll handle everything style, with him and Jenna holding a camera, lying to everyone. And that's the substance of their conversation, which went nowhere. And it doesn't deserve to, because they're both narcissistic morons. But there we are.